Hi, everyone. This is Miss Jenkins, and by now you may have heard from your SIT rep, or you may have read the emails that I've sent out regarding compliance with our public communication, and that involves any websites, social media, Parent Square, lots of different things. And I just want to kind of go over why we have to do this and when we need to start doing this. So let's start with the why. All public entities, including schools, are legally mandated under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II, Section 504, to ensure all web content and mobile apps conform to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA Technical Standard. That's a mouthful. So here's the deal. Cabarrus County Schools must comply by April 24th, 2026. After that date, if we are not in compliance with any public web content or mobile apps like social media, we are subjected to some very hefty fees that are school based. And so we want to try to avoid that because, like I said, these are really expensive fees. And I don't foresee any issues as long as we are making a good effort to try to change our content to make it accessible. So let's talk about the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are international standards that tell us how to make digital content usable for everyone. So this includes people who use screen readers, which is mostly most of the people that we communicate to. That's going to be the main one that we really have to think about. But it also applies to magnifiers, captions, or keyboard navigation. And like I said, this applies to all school communication. The four principles of WCAG: content must be, and here's the acronym we use here, POUR. P is for perceivable, so it has to be available to users via sight, hearing, or touch. O is for operable. It has to be keyboard accessible so people can navigate, and it has to be compatible with different input methods. The U is for understandable, so the content must be readable and predictable with clear labels and instructions. And finally, the R is for robust. It has to work with a variety of assistive technologies, browsers, and devices. Overall, we're looking at making our public communication essential for are accessible for some, but also useful for all. So we're thinking of this curb cut effect here. So you've seen these, when people, if you're on a curb, you see the little cutout, then we know that's for people who may be in wheelchairs so they can get from the curb to the street level or street level back up onto the curb. And it is essential for them. It's essential for those people. However, that modification is also useful for those people who are pushing strollers or have a roller bag or on skateboards. So, what we're thinking about here is when we design for accessibility, the engagement improves for the entire community. And so, we're thinking about not just disabilities. A disability is a mismatch between a person and their environment, and there are different constraints that go along with that. So you do have people who have permanent constraints, like the person in the picture on the left here with the hearing impairment, but there are also situational constraints. So if you're in a crowded airport or coffee shop, right, you might be having trouble watching a video that the district sends out. So accessibility can help bridge the gap between these constraints. We're really looking at accessibility. It's not just for a small group of students, it's really about all of us. All right, so what needs to be improved or changed or have some modifications here? Newsletters. If you send out any type of newsletters to your parents, please make sure that you are following some of the compliance guidelines that I'll get into in a later video. Emails, that includes your signature. I myself am guilty of having a signature that is not compliant at the moment, so I will have to start making changes to that. If you're in charge of any social media related to the school or event announcements, websites. Now, I will say Canvas is shown up there. However, by the time that we are responsible for being or complying, it's April 24th. That's right before we get out for summer. Our district has said we're not going to focus on Canvas this year. We're going to wait until next year. Okay. However, if you have any Google Sites related to a club or to maybe you have one for one of your classes, you will have to go through that site and make sure that you are following these accessibility guidelines. The school website itself is my responsibility, so you don't have to worry about that. Sorry about these images with all the Robinson stuff. I borrowed it from the ITF over there. And so, anyways, let's move on. All right, this is what will affect most of our staff, and that is Parent Square. If you are sending out Parent Square messages that's just text only, you really don't have to change anything. However, if you are including downloads or images, there are some other steps you'll have to take to make sure that we are complying with these mandates. And I will be going over those tips and tricks in a different video. So I'm going to start with things that will affect that you'll see come up the most. So that's alt text, informational graphics, and video captions. So I don't want everybody to get too nervous about this. Like I said, I don't think we're going to get flagged for anything if we are making a good faith effort on trying to comply with these mandates. And if you ever have any questions about anything, please reach out. I will do my best to help you. And I will get through this. And before too long, it'll just become second nature to us all. All right. Thank you.